And we are live. What's going on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Live? It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Tuesday, January 23rd. It's time for another session of the Men's Circle. We're just going to jump right into tonight's topic. Tonight's topic is going to be about raising men. When I was thinking about this particular topic, I was like, well, it seems like it would exclude people who don't have sons, but that's not really what this topic is about. It's not about whether you have a son or you only have daughters or you don't have any children. It's really about what example we set as men for the upcoming generation behind us. Excuse me. But before we even jump into that, I want to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. You know, we got some oldies but goodies and some newsies, and I want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. So I'm going to go in the order that I have on my screen. Mark, you are new. You get to introduce yourself first.
All right. What's up, everyone? As you know, my name's Mark. I'm based out of the Houston, Texas area. I have one son. He's 22 months right now, almost 2 years old. So I'm probably have the youngest kid here, is my guess. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, I'm still kind of new in the fatherhood journey, but I'm constantly learning, and I hope to learn from everyone tonight.
Cool, appreciate you. So really quick, since Mark didn't say this,
sorry, I was gonna say, yo, Mark, you got a nice set of hair there, my friend. I hope you don't grow attached to it.
Yeah, I'm actually growing my hair out. My hair is usually never this long. So.
Yeah, no, my hair is never that long at all. Mark actually, I met Mark when I moved to Utah on the first row. He and I actually did an interstation together, but he's been a long time watcher of first row content. So I'm actually happy to have you here tonight to jump back on and get into the live. The next person I have on my list, John, it looks like you're up next.
Hey, what's going on? I'm John Yang. I've been rolling with Billy ever since middle school. We've been friends for a very long time. Grew up in the same neighborhood. So I'm just glad to be back on here. Appreciate everyone here.
Appreciate you coming in.
Sounds like you got some competition there. I hope you don't get jealous, buddy.
All right. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
And then next, I got you, Art. You're up.
Well, I'm Art Diaz. I'm out here currently in Florida. Just hanging out here, doing the family thing, military thing, or at least trying to get the military back up and running, right? But yeah, just out here in Florida, hanging out with the Row. Known him for a couple years now. It's good times with Billy. Never a dull moment. I just don't ever play Monopoly. Period. That's it.
Yeah. Don't play Monopoly. Competitive. And then Tim, I got you.
Yeah, I'm one of the oldies but goodies Billy mentioned before. If you're a frequent watcher of the show, it's my brother from another. Don't really have a memory that doesn't involve Billy since like first grade. Good to see Art. Good to see John. Welcome, Mark. I'm growing my hair out too. It's like that's like a thing going on right now. That's the longest my hair has been in a minute. But really looking forward to the topic. And like Art said, Mark, I have a gray hair. My first gray hair popped up on the side of my sideburn, and I'm gonna name that one Noah, which is my son. So good luck.
Having sons is like that guy on, what is it, Mad TV, Stewie. Look what I can do. Always look what I can do. So No, definitely appreciate all you gentlemen joining tonight. As I said, I want to jump into the topic. The topic is raising men. And as always with the topic, I like to start off with what does the topic mean to you? So when you guys received this email from me saying, hey, this is tonight's topic, raising men, what did that mean to you? How did that jump out to you?
Well, if I may, um, to me, what that gave me the memory and realization of how my father treated me, how he raised me, right? What he thought was ethics, what he thought was the good versus the bad, or the right and the wrong as men, to what I see now as um, women or men are being portrayed. You know what I mean? And versus what my beliefs are of being a man to raising a man, and the only conclusion I can come out with, and that just always pops up into my mind, is integrity and accountability. Doesn't matter how big and yoked in the gym or in combat and on computers, right? Integrity and accountability is what sets you apart from everyone else. That to me, that at the end, that's what pops up into my mind as being raised as a man, being depended on.
Yeah, the integrity and accountability part, we're probably going to jump into that a little more into depth later, but absolutely, when it comes to being a man, if you can't be accountable, you can't have integrity without being accountable. So if you can't be accountable, it's going to be a long road of trying to be a man on your journey. Let's go with you, Mark. What do you got? What does the topic mean to you?
Yeah, it's kind of piggybacking off what he said. Yeah, big. I mean, my kid's really young right now, but it's trying to instill proper values, character. So especially for his age right now is just trying to teach like proper like behavior. And as he gets older, of course, just keep building on that foundation as he gets older and older. And then when he's finally 18, whatever, around adult age, I could really get more in depth about just dealing with like real life with women, jobs, careers, friends, like finding your purpose, your faith and all that. So it's just, for me, it's raising a son is, it's just like it's a constant process. It's never over, like it's continual. And so that's where I'm at, is just constantly, because I'm constantly learning myself as a man now. Like I'm not done learning even now. Like I'm in my 30s and I still think I have so much more room to grow. So just just teaching him what I already know, teaching him to avoid mistakes I made when I was younger. And it's growing together as father and son.
Yeah, we're going to come to that too. About, it's almost like reverse mentorship. You're the parent and you're supposed to be teaching, but at the same time you're learning. I learned a lot between my first son to my third son. I learned quite a bit, and I'm still learning. So you're never going to know it all. So I'm assuming with my grandson, I'm going to learn some more things that are just different from the experience. John or Tim, either one of you guys can go. What does the topic mean to you?
Yeah, hey Billy, I'll go. So when I read your prompt, and when I saw raising man, I was like, okay, I think I could do it. I could do that. But then I read the next line, and you mentioned don't confuse this with raising sons, and then I was like, what is Billy talking about? Like sons and men? And then I was like, okay. It took me a minute to distinguish the two, but one thing that really jumps out is obviously is like the father figure that's in my that was in my life. And it's tough. It's considering, for me, it's knowing my dad, you know, he showed a lot of love, but he showed a lot of like hard love too. So and now like with you know, just the time where we're at in this point in time in this world, you know, like where it's a lot of the mental health, and you know, it's we're expressing a lot of the emotions, and that's something that was never really taught. So it's difficult right now. So I'm trying to balance that out, because when I say like my dad was tough, I mean, I'm saying like, you know, he was basically a child soldier. You know, like he was a child soldier. As you know, you hear like the crazy war stories where you know, like he has seen trauma, he's seen death. You know, like he experienced it, and you know, like every path that he's taken, like it's always been like trouble was waiting for him. And like when he was raising me, it was more like avoid the trouble. And then and he never really shared the stories with me. Like I would hear from the uncles, and they were like from the older brothers, but he never shared it with me, because I mean, I think for the most part he was trying to show that from me. So I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this all out. So I'm glad to be here.
Always happy to have you. Always. Tim, what you got?
Yeah, this hit me on a few different levels. The first one was experience, right? So you said don't think of it as sons, but your recourse and your knee jerk is to think about it from being the father and the son. And I think about it from being the son first. And my dad was very much do as I say, because I said so. Very limited need for, you know, I don't need to explain myself to you. Which that doesn't, my dad's a good dad, but what really helped me was the partnership between that and then my older brother, who would say, hey, look, he's telling you that because of this, and this. And he would give me the why behind it. So I always wonder, like, what if I didn't have my brother? Like, where would I have gone with that? So I think about that. So I think about it like in the aspect of where I'm at now in my life. And I think about these things, and it's mentorship. It doesn't have to be son. It could be anybody that you're willing to help. And the first part is selection, right? In my opinion, you got to select the right person, because if you're going to select somebody that isn't open to it, all you're going to do is frustrate yourself, because you're going to tell this person drop all the gems to them, and they're just going, oh, and do the dumb stuff that they were going to do anyway, and you're going to wonder why you're wasting your breath. So you have to make sure you're selective on who you spend and devote this time to. You got to be patient in the process. They're not going to do everything that you say, because they're not a Sims character at the end of the day. They're still human beings, where your information is part of their decision-making process, not their entire decision-making process. And then when it's all about the quality and impact of your influence. So if you're given good information and good information, one of the things we struggle with, especially as men, is pride. We're very quick to tell you where we're good at and what we did right in this world. But it takes a special type of man to be able to say, hey, listen, learn from what I did, and I messed this up. I did this wrong. Your mom, I cheated on her. I did her wrong. Don't do as I did. I cost that. And really, like you said, the accountability, ownership, which I'm pretty sure we'll get into at this time. But being in mistakes and learning from them, and having that humility to show that you're not perfect, that goes a long way.
Yeah, I agree with that, from the concept of we try to shield people from our failures, and they begin to think that the path to manhood is this perfect straight line, no zigs, no zags, no falling off the road and getting back on. They just think it's this direct route, and it's not, and they get extremely disappointed. I even had to deal with this with my oldest son, where he was dealing with depression because he's like, I just don't know what the future is. I don't know what there is beyond this moment. And he felt like he had to have it all figured out. I was like, do you know the knucklehead I was before I had you? Like, you straightened that road out for me, because now somebody was dependent upon me when it was just me running amok. But now that it's me and you, no, I can't run amok, because I drag you through the stuff that I can go through pretty effortlessly by myself, and you're not old enough nor competent enough as a child to be able to process or deal with the fact that, well, dad had a girlfriend, then she came and yelled at him, and then she left, and I never seen her again. You can't process that, so I have to be more responsible in the decisions that I'm making. But when I started thinking about this topic, I actually thought about how the first row came to be. And the first video I ever did on the first row was about being a father to the fatherless. And not it happened to be a young man that I was speaking to, but my perspective of being a father to the fatherless is showing the younger generation what it is to be a father, what it is to be a man, what it is to have principles and stand on those principles. And it doesn't mean, like you said, that you get it right every time, but at least you have some type of principle that hey, even if I fall off, I know where I'm trying to get back to. I know the character that I want to display. I know the behaviors that I want to display. I know the legacy that I want to live and leave. And so for me, when I started thinking about this, I started thinking, that's why I said, I get you may have a son, but this is not about having sons, because what sparked first row for me wasn't even my own sons. It was an experience I had showing a young man what it was to be a man, an upcoming man, I guess, to show him what it is to be a man, to see something taking place in an environment that you're in, and to step up and be that leader in that space and say, hey, look, as men, that's not how we do things. Hey, look, as youth who are currently, unfortunately, getting murdered by law enforcement, this is not where you want to cause this scene at. Like, to just give him that education in that space and say, this is what's taking place around you. You got to be aware that it's not just you in this one little space. And also to give him the, hey, look, you throwing your temper tantrum, if you would have threw that water bottle and it hit my 2-year-old son, I'd have kicked you into the dang little fountain that you were standing next to, and felt no kind of way about it until the cops came to get me for kicking you into the fountain. So those are the things when I started thinking about this topic, why it's important as for me, important that as a man, I am setting a standard and presenting and living. There's two things. You can't just present it and not live it, because as soon as that's found out, all what you presented is going to crumble anyway. But presenting and living a standard, not that it's flawless, not that it's perfect, but a standard that replicates to other young men that are up and coming, and other men who may be grown already, that, hey, you know what? There's some things that Ro is doing as a man that I really want to align with. And I want to be more engaged with people like that in my life, because iron sharpens iron in that. You know, I have people who've come to me and have said, you know, I'm struggling with this with my marriage. I'm struggling with this with my job. I'm struggling with this with my mental health. And it's like, hey, look, I'm glad you're willing to come to me and share that with me, because these are things that I've struggled with before and things that I'll probably struggle with in the future. To me, that's what it is to be in this topic of raising men. We're not just raising children. We are raising all levels, from infant through elderly. We're raising all levels of men. And so going back, I want to go back for both Art and Tim, when you guys were talking about your fathers and kind of having an example given to you of what manhood was. You know, I told you what to do and you're going to do it because I said to do it. You know, why are you crying? Don't be a punk. Don't be a wimp. Don't be a sissy. All those different things. If you could go back and have that conversation with your father about, hey, you're teaching me how to be a man, what are some of the things you would want him to adjust and to teach you a little more efficiently?
Honestly, that's a hard question. The only thing I would probably inquire with my father is to ask, why this manner? Why is it that you're choosing to teach me this way? Because me going back to say, hey, you know, teach me this way, or change it, right? Or don't do this, would say that I'm not happy, or would makes me feel like I'm not happy where I'm at and how I've become, you know? That's like saying, to me, it's like comparing in the sense to saying, well, I regret being with my ex-wife, you know, because she was mean. But then it's like, what about my son? You know what I mean? He's a product of that marriage, that situation. You know, whether it went bad, it went or to worse, whatever. But he's a product, and that's something that I enjoy having. But it goes back to the only question I would have with my father, and it was one that I had before he passed away, was why did he feel this was the best route or best way to treat us as his children? Because my father was one of those that he just, he was a working alcoholic, right? He drank. He was out drinking at work, and it got to the point where that was the only way he worked. You know, he had to have a drink in his hands. But to us, seeing a drink in his hand was, oh, here comes trouble. You know what I mean? And because, of course, kind of similar to Tim's father is I'm the man of the house, I'm home. What did you do to make the house better, and why didn't you listen to your mother? You know, that's kind of what it was. That was his way, I guess. You know.
Got it. Tim, what about you?
I gotta say this first, so it doesn't seem like I'm crapping on my dad, because me and my dad have actually had this conversation. And I'll share it with you. One of the things I admire the most about my dad is my dad wasn't the most educated person, but he's learned through his things that he wishes. Like, he hasn't been. Anytime he had a regret, he's tried to make amends on that. And so me and him have had multiple conversations. One of the conversations I had with my dad that really highlights what we're talking about is he asked me one time, he said, "Dad, you think I was a good dad?" And I said, "Man, and I highlighted, you lack of education, you worked multiple jobs, you did what you could, you were good for the time and the era. You only knew what to play with. You only played with the hand that you dealt. You didn't come from a stable family. You know what I mean?" But what I told him was, because he said, if there was anything that you would have me do differently, what would it be? I said, I wish you would have just opened up to me a little bit more. Help me understand why you were where the anger sometimes came from, or the frustration sometimes came from. I just felt like I was dealing with that, but not being the cause of it. So it left me like, Billy, he used to be at the house. Pops come home, we head to the back. It's time to go to the back of the house. Pops
And
is
Billy was
home,
probably the trouble. That's what it was.
Nah, hey, existence was the trouble. You know what I mean? Hey, he needed his time to decompress. And as we had conversations, as I'm an older man and I'm an older person, and he sees me more as closer to a peer than a child now, he tells me those things. I believe he's opened up more about the discussion because he wants me to be better for his grandkids, which is impressive for the scope that he can see that through. But he's told me, like, he shared with me, like, man, there'd be times I'd be really stressed out about money. Didn't know how the bill was going to get paid. Didn't know what was happening. People getting laid off all around me. Am I going to lose my job? That type of stuff. And he just shouldered that all in. Disagreement. Me and your mom don't agree on something. We're not on good terms. We got to put a united front out. We can't have y'all seeing division. And it's like, man, so you realize, like, I wish my dad would have had access to something like this. In short, Billy, I wish my dad would have been able to sit at home and watch something like The First Row in 1985. Maybe
Right.
that would have accelerated that process, and he would enjoy more of his life instead of getting to the point now where he's 71 years old and he feels like he's in a really good spot. Maybe he could have did that at 45, like me, 43.
Yeah, and it's hard back in that day because technology just wasn't that. Like, I didn't see my dad talk on the phone a lot. You know what I mean? But I did see my dad go to his friends' houses, right?
He did 3 minutes. And you heard, yeah, all right. What time? All right, see you then. Bye.
Right. It was fishing. Those were the most probably impactful conversations my father had, and the most impactful conversations I would see my father have with his peers was fishing, out there on the boat, talking shit to each other, complaining about their wives and all kinds of stuff. But those were the most impactful conversations, because it was a space to see my dad outside of that grumpiness in the household, right? That I don't even know, that lingering, I want to call it like the lingering fart that just won't seem to dissipate out of the room. It was an opportunity for me to see him in his relaxed element, where there wasn't, like you said, layoffs and I got to worry about this and money and bills and all the different things. It was really good.
That's who you got to see him as who he was, not who he thought he should be.
Right.
So, yeah, I get that. I remember going on camping trips with my dad and seeing him in that element and be like, damn, this is my dad? Who is this dude?
Right. You don't never come to the house. Really quick, I'm going to bring in some things from the chat. Good evening, Soto. Glenn says, not being raised by one, this topic is an intentional focus for me. Having 3 boys and a baby girl, my hope is to lead by example and to help them be a strong foundation. Yeah, help them to be a strong foundation so that their next generation can build. Without that example, I've chosen to create and continue creating the blueprint for them. That's what a lot of us have done. I talk to a lot of men, and a lot of men have, I don't know what to do, but I'm just going to not do what my dad did. Like, that's where a lot of us have as the starting point for manhood, like how to be men is, yeah, what he was doing, I really don't want to be that kind of man. So I'm going to just try to do things that are opposite of that. But unfortunately, our fathers or even our male mentors, they don't have every single life experience to get wrong. And so if all you're doing is the opposite of what they've done, when you start encountering those things that they've never encountered, so therefore you've never seen what the wrong thing is to do, now you're left with a decision to make. Well, what is the right thing? How do I select the right thing? How do I make the right thing? And really, when it comes to raising men, I feel like that's what it is about, is us making the best decisions possible, whether it's financially, spiritually, home ownership, or whatever it may be, making those decisions in a space that is exposed, and it's going to suck, but that is exposed for judgment. That is actually out there so people can judge it and say, I like the way he did that. That's not the way I wanted to do that. I wonder how that worked out for them. And so that really brings me, for me at least, to my next question. And this is really more so for Mark and John. But what examples do you guys wish you had when you were young men? Because I had a plethora of good and bad examples.
You know, go ahead, Mark.
All right, thanks. I guess one thing that sticks out looking back, like on my childhood, that I wish I had, like better, not, I don't want to say better, but a more tangible example would be like conflict, like dealing with conflict with other people, like dealing with like confrontations, like how to handle that. Because like growing up, like my parents, like they taught me a lot of great things, but that was like one thing I lacked was how to, like in a healthy way, how to, I guess, defend yourself without, standing firm, but not being, I guess, too hostile. Because even now, sometimes I tend to like be on one extreme or the other extreme. Like I'll be like super angry to the point where it like scares people, or I'll be on the other end where I'm almost like a doormat kind of like. So just finding like a healthy middle ground where I'm not at a point of like violence or anything, but I'm not just laying down either. So that's one thing I've been working on over the years, is just having that having a good middle ground when it comes to interpersonal conflict.
That's good. That's a good one. Yeah, my conflict was fight every time. We're gonna fight every time. You want a quarter for my lunch money? Fight. You want a quarter for my popcorn? Fight. It was always fight. There was never a walk away for me. It took me years, decades to get to a space where it's like, hey, I don't want to fight you, and I'll be whatever you want to call me. I'll be all that. Just keep that over there, because if you do come over here, I will protect myself, but I'm not going to actively pursue fighting you, where before I would actively pursue fighting you. John, what you got?
Yeah, so for me, it's really conflicting. So like I've mentioned, my dad, he with his background, like he's a man's man. Like he's the one knew how to play sports. He's the one that knew how to do more Muay Thai, kickboxing. So him growing up, he always chose violence. But then raising us, he taught us discipline, where he was like, John, you better not get into any trouble, because you get into trouble, you come home, you're going to deal with me. So for me, growing up, it was just, I was more afraid of my dad more than anything else. I mean, like if like get into fights, I mean, like I stood up for myself at times, but then even when standing up for myself, I was more afraid of, damn, what's going to happen when I get home. So versus now raising my two boys, and I'll be really honest too, raising my two boys, I tell them, say, hey, someone do you wrong, I expect you to throw it down. I was like, I don't care what happens. Like if you believe that if someone did you wrong, throw it down. We'll talk about this later. So it's really different, and I don't know if that's healthy or not. But for me, is I wish I was a little bit more dangerous. Not that I don't think I'm dangerous, but I wish I was a bit more dangerous, and I wish I've shown the toughness, because for me, it's like in terms of like, I mean, me, Billy, I'm a small dude, but in terms of like my mental capacity, the mentalness that my dad put me through, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's wild. And so like he trained me there, but like it just knowing now what I know now, it's like you really, it's hard. I mean, like I don't want to say that I'm falling into a trap of like what a man should be, but like how you mentioned just earlier, we get judged every time. Like, oh, that happened, John did this. Oh, I'm gonna think about why did he do that? Or like something as simple as like, like where I could show like love to my partner, and then some might say, oh, John is like being a simp. John is being like, oh man, that guy is like head over heels for her. And then I'm like, and this could be like from a lady, from another person, and not just a guy, where I'm like, you were just talking that your man just don't show you love, and then right here I'm trying to show love, and I'm getting judged that I'm doing it all wrong. Like, do I got to be like that the asshole or something? So it's like, it's conflicting. It's like, do I show love or do not show love? It's like, what's the right thing to do? It's crazy.
No, it's interesting, because I want to back up to one of the things you said. You said somebody do you wrong, you throw down, right?
Yeah.
That's a very broad space to give a person, because there's different variances to wrong. And this is what got me snagged up in throwing temper tantrums and fighting and stuff like that was, if you disrespected me, we got to fight about it, right? Yeah. And it took me saying to myself, well, what level of disrespect? Like, you're not just going to come up and slap my wife on her ass and walk away. I'm a fire on you, hands down. You're going to get fired on. But if you're walking past this and you look at my wife, that could be disrespectful. You see me walking with my wife, right? But what level of disrespect is that? I mean, I don't expect you to be blind, and I can't just beat you up because you happen to look at my wife. I've never been a really jealous type person, but there's just varying levels of disrespect. So when you say if somebody does you wrong, as men, our job is to give both tangible examples that we live, like, hey, this is where somebody did me wrong and I did this. Like, I remember being in corporate America when I was an IT recruiter. this guy in my office, we were talking about something, and it kind of got into like this little heated argument. And the dude told me, he said, "Man, go sit down." I said, "What?" I was like, why don't you escort me back to my desk since you're so tough? Like, I'll beat the brakes off of you right here in this office. You've lost your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is I'm a provider and I need to take care of my kids. And this is how I'm making income to take care of my kids. Why am I going to lose my ability to provide for my family over the fact that you told me to sit down? Like, I could just simply go and sit down and deal with that either later, or I can go and sit down and just never interact with you again. And still, that's somebody talking to you crazy and reckless and disrespectful. But how we interact with that and what throwing down looks like has to have some guidelines. Because if you just give it free for all, a lot of young men are going to pick violence. They're going to choose violence. That's why men fight so much.
Yeah. And
That's why we get into bar fights. That's why we get into street public fights, Walmart fights, road rage fights. That's why we get into so many fights.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Billy, on this from my perspective. Like, like I would say I have always been like that nice guy, like, that nice guy. So we all know nice guy, they don't get respected much, no matter where you're at. Like no matter how high you climb up the ladder, no matter what kind of education, no matter what you do, if you're that nice guy, you just don't get that level of respect, which I think, like it should be cool if there's nice guys, but like for whatever reason, they just don't get that respect. So
yeah, nice guys are not feared.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. In my experience, nice guys are the craziest fighters I've ever seen in my life. in my life.
That. Yep.
Tim will tell you, DJ threw a whole overhead projector at somebody while we were at Grant. And I kept telling the person, I was like, hey, you might want to leave him alone. He's not all there. And they were just like, what he gonna do to me? Because he was the guy who would draw Dungeons and Dragon characters, and he was an easygoing guy. But once you flip that switch on him, he was like, I'll throw this whole overhead and 6 desks at you and not lose any sleep tonight. And so in my experience, where a lot of people think nice guys, oh, they won't stand up for themselves, what are you gonna do? I'm like, yeah, those are people who will break your arm and beat you with it. Like you don't want to mess with those people. But I let people learn their life lessons accordingly. One of the things that for me, when I thought about this question, what examples do I wish I had when I was a young man? A lot of my mentorship, hey, what's up, mama? A lot of my mentorship, I had to go and get on my own. Like, there were not a lot of older men of substance reaching back to younger men to show them the path, right? There was a lot of knuckleheads, thugs, and drug dealers and gangbangers that was like, yo, come and join our gang. Come and move this way. Hey, you want to commit these robberies? Like, there was a lot of that was reaching back, but there wasn't a lot of men who were making good decisions that were reaching back. There was a lot of reaching up that I had to do to say, hey, look, I'm trying not to drown here. I need your help. And one of the things that has always stuck with me, and it's probably why I am the type of godfather that I am at this point in my life, is because I remember when I was very, very young, my sister had a godfather. I believe his name was Jack. And my mother, when I was born, was like, hey, Jack, I want you to be Billy's godfather, right? And Jack was like, I don't want to be Billy's godfather. And she was like, what? And she's like, but you're my daughter's godfather. He's like, yeah, but I don't want to be Billy's godfather. And she was just like, well, then you're not going to be either of my kids' godfather if you can't be both of my kids' godfather. And I don't remember seeing Jack after that. Like, I think that was the end of Jack. But for me, I take that and I say, okay, as a godfather, how do I want to show up in the lives of my godchildren? I make sure that they're included in my inheritance. I make sure that, like Tim will tell you, my godson Noah, he comes out here to Utah, and if he brings his family, he's all of a sudden the tour guide on everything about Utah. I want to show up as a present father in my children's lives, but I also want to show up as a present godfather. I don't want to just have this title. And I think that's for me when I think about raising men. A lot of men get caught up on the fact of I'm a grown ass man, right? I'm a grown ass man. But what are you doing though? But what are you doing to help other young men and to help other men actually mature to the space to where they can actually go back, reach down, and pull somebody else up? A lot of people just want to say, I have this title, I have this father, oh, I'm dad, oh, I'm godfather, oh, I'm a man, oh, I'm the CEO. They have these titles, but they're not acting on what that title actually means in the space of the leadership or in the space of leadership. Before I move on, I do want to bring Key's comment. He says, one example I wish I had when I was a young man was having a man experiencing hard times and how he worked through them, or the process and steps he took to get through them. Absolutely. Because a lot of that goes back to last week's or week before last conversation on suffering and silence. A lot of them just grit and bear it. Well, I'm a man. I got to man up. What is man up? Like reality.
Man. Yeah. Key, the first thing I thought of when I seen this question was, I wish I had an example of someone that knew how to lead breadcrumbs to success, or conflict resolution or whatever. Someone that could give me the breakdown of what their thought process was. Man, Key, you're right on line. I also want to say something real quick to Glenn, because Glenn's he's a familiar face in the circle. Glenn's comment earlier really kind of struck a nerve with me in a good way. Glenn is the type of guy that's what the men's circle is all about. He didn't have something in his life, and there's two ways you can go with that. You can use this as an excuse for why your life isn't turning out the way it is, or you could decide to be what you didn't get to someone else. And it takes a really, really strong person to do what Glenn's doing. So, Glenn, I want to give you your flowers. Ain't that what the kids call it these days, giving you flowers? I'm giving you flowers. Yeah. I'm going to do a reverse Cat Williams to you, Glenn. You're the man.
Yeah, Bruce, what are they doing? And Glenn says, thank you, brother. I'm humbled and honored to be a part of the circle. Absolutely. So, John, did you have something else? You came off mute. I didn't know if you had something else.
No, I don't.
Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and move on, because here's going to those breadcrumbs, right? I feel like a lot of us had to go to the school of hard knocks. Like I can even go to like just with my father. I think he had my oldest sibling at like 17, and then my next one at like 18. My next sibling at 18, and then he had me 11 years later or 10 years later. So he's 28 when he finally had me. But those deficiencies of like I know my father was an all-star athlete when it came to football, track and field, right? And a lot of his dreams of either going pro or going to college and being on a scholarship were just, they came to an abrupt end because he became a father so young. And I didn't become a father at 17. I became a father at 21. But I wish we would have had some of the conversations about those struggles that he had as a young father who doesn't have a career, doesn't have money flowing in, isn't educated beyond high school and all these different things. I wish we would have had some of those conversations prior to me having my son, so I would have understood what it was I was getting involved with. But my question for the circle is what deficiencies did you have to figure out as a result of having a lack of role models in your life and a lack of examples of what men should be, or I'm not going to say should be, could strive to be?
Can I go real quick? I got an example, man. Like not nothing that's personal with me, but just like an analogy of why or what I'm about to say. We keep talking about the breadcrumbs thing, right? Here's what I mean by that, right? You know how many people are on child support because they keep having multiple baby mothers and all that, and they don't, and by the time they realize what that actually meant, it was too late, they had to pay it. What if you had an older person look at you and say, man, listen, you keep sleeping with all these women, You keep doing all this. I'm on child support. Let me show you what that looks like. And then show you the paycheck with what they got and what they had to pay out. How much more do you think that would be effective as preventing that specific situation? And that's just one example. Like, listen, man, here's my paycheck. I brought home $1,200. Unfortunately, I had to pay $700 in child support. I'm living off this $500 for 2 weeks, and I got to pay this bill, and this bill.
Right.
And also, I'm trying to go on dates still and be a, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine how much of a deterrent that would be, as opposed to, I think too much in our society today, mentorship has got two things really wrong with it. And this is the deficiencies I struggle with. There's an absence of explanation on things like that. It's once you're going through it, the mentor usually comes in, oh yeah, I've been through that. It's like, damn, why didn't you tell me you went through that and what you went through before I went through it? But at the same time, a lot of mentorship is about preventing mistakes, and that's not always a great thing either, because you learn lessons and you learn empathy through your mistakes. With the absence of mistakes and just avoiding mistakes, it limits your knowledge of those things. So for me, I didn't get that, hey, this is where this is going to go. You got to have, I'm messing up and I did what you did when you were younger. And that whole little breadcrumb thing. And for the society at large, like the example I gave about the child support, that would hit a lot different. People just say, oh, child support, man, she's really 18 years you got me. Okay, what does that 18 years look like financially every week? How is it impacting your livelihood? That's going to send a stronger message than, oh, you know how women be. Because sometimes people think that's the shared human experience. Oh, I'm not the only one on child support. Let me get thrown on child. By the way, I'm not on child support. Never was. It's just the first thing that came to my mind to kind of cement my point. Because I've heard people tell me, I had a coworker of mine that I work with. This man bought himself a cake that he had decorated for himself to celebrate coming off child support. That he shared with the office at the time. Everybody come in here and get some of this cake. It's off a child support cake. The freedom cake, he called it. and so, like, I bet you he would have loved that. And again, like kind of what Art said, you get like in a sticky situation because you don't regret the kid, right? But it's the impact that negative stuff like that has on you. It like you said, Billy, kind of limits your like you did with your dad. I used to hate your dad, dude. Not like really, but I used to go up to the track at Grant West, and I'd run my ass off on that track, run like 10 laps. This dude would have been there sweating before I got there, and he'd still be running when I left. Talk about a runner, man. That dude could run. So, yeah. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Fair enough. No, I love the child support analogy hits home because with my father being so young, not knowing, hey, look, at some point, this child support you ain't going to pay is going to come out another time. I never knew the amount, but I knew my dad was in the arrears by the time my siblings were adults. And that was one of the things for me. I was like, I ain't never going to be in the arrears on child support. Like, you are going to get paid to 18, and that will be the end of that support. And I actually am on child support right now, but I'm not on child support through a system. I'm on child support because I believe I should take care of my kids. And so I'm going to do what I need to do to take care of my children. And we have agreed on what that amount should be. And if there's something that they need above and beyond that, that's reasonable, not just, oh, they want to go to Disney World Japan or Universal Japan. No. Something that's reasonable, I'm going to make sure I contribute additional to that. But it's interesting because I never knew what the amount was, but it was enough to see that he had to pay somebody who he didn't like. He had to pay somebody who he didn't pay when he should have paid them. And there was interest added to that. And I didn't even know what the interest amount was. I was like, yeah, no, we're going to make sure everybody gets all of their coins up front on time. And you're never going to come to me and say, you didn't pay for XYZ. No, I paid for everything.
Every time he got paid, he was getting the Sonic rings knocked out of him. Goodness.
Bling! What about somebody else? What deficiencies did you have to figure out on your own because there was no male example. And it could be an uncle, it could be a pastor, a brother, or whatever. Art, you're muted, and you had your, oh, now where'd your voice go? We can't hear you. Hold on. I'm gonna mute you and unmute you. You literally put your thumb up, and I don't even know how you did that. And then you're not muted, or now you're muted. We can't hear you. Can you guys hear him? Okay.
Yeah. No dice, Art. We can't hear you.
Go out and come back in. That's all I can tell you to do because I have no idea. And then share that up.
He has something good too.
Yeah, I can tell. He has something good. Mark or John, what about you guys? What deficiencies did you have to figure out?
Hey, Billy, I would say for me, it would be more of a like a bigger deficiency, and be like it kind of like what you're been bringing to the table here is basically like how do you create your mission? You know, basically like what legacy are you trying to provide? So basically, like how do you become a man? You know, if that's basically the deficiencies that I'm trying to figure out. So you become a man when you're able to provide. You know, like so it's basically like how do you provide? So for me, like my dad have always say like he always preached education, but you know like when because he's from overseas. So like he knew how business was ran over there, but coming to the States here, things were different. So he didn't really know how to help. I mean, he had the right mindset, but he didn't really know how to pave like, hey, you know, these are like the college applications. This is what you need to do to get into certain schools. He just knew like, hey, you know, go to school, be a doctor. But then I'm like, man, I'm okay with going to school, but to be a doctor, I'm not so sure about that. So that was something trying to figure out, like, you know, like how do I make a man out of myself? You know, like my dad preached the nonviolent way, although he was a violent man. You know, like he preached education, but you know, we didn't know anything about schools here. So that was something like where, you know, I'm trying to figure out, like how you said, there was the lack of mentors. I did have a few mentors, but in terms of like the abundance, it wasn't there.
All right, we know you had something amazing to say.
How's it going? Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now.
Yeah.
Don't do that thumbs up thing again because it broke you.
I jacked it all up. Well, in regards to deficiencies, honestly, I was the deficiency. My pride was the deficiency. I know what I'm doing. It's not going to happen to me. What happened to you is because of you, not me. That was my deficiency. The being above the standard, the God's gift to the world. That was my mentality and what got me into situations that I shouldn't have, right? Because, you know, again, my father, as mean or rude as whatever, you know, I thought for him to be, he taught me with like how you guys described. He taught me with what he was dealt with. He went a little bit above beyond to raise me with what he didn't know. You know, again, he being a immigrant from another country, different economy, different currency, different language. You know, he still managed to guide me in a new country, new life, new economy. But it was again the me that was the deficiency. And once I got into that, then I figured out, hey, it's we all make mistakes. Hey, what are you doing to remedy that mistake? How are you going to correct that image that you portrayed in a negative light? Like, you know, I'm trying to remember who it was that said it, but the being the nice guy is a good thing, because the more tough you are, the harder you try to fight back, the more resistance you're gonna get. And you know, I'm not scared to get down and box or fight with somebody, but other people are worse. You know what I mean? There's more people willing to fight and for shits and giggles, like they say. And it's like, at what point do you say, all right, I'm done? You know what I mean? Like, at what point do you let your your pride hurt, I guess. I'm not sure what the right word is to say. Like, okay, I'm not it. I need to stop.
You go.
I need to back up. You know what I mean? I need
Right.
to be the Billy to say, all right, I need to go sit down because this is dependent on my family.
Right.
It's that to me. That was my main deficiency. And then after that, I'd start watching. For an example, this group right now. I don't know. You know, I don't know a lot of you personally, but I do listen to your stories. I do listen to your message and evaluate to where, huh, okay, I can see where he's coming from, or I can understand because I have a 3-year-old right now, 3-year-old little girl, and sometimes in the middle of the night she scratches my face because she's trying to get into the bed with me. You know what I mean? And it wakes me up, and I get mad, but hey, I understand her. You know what I mean? She's scared or she wants to sleep with mama and papa. Um, I've been the little guy, you know what I mean, where I need to be nice to get out of here. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I need to get ahead in my work. So I need to be that nice guy, the one that everybody goes to and says, "Hey, I heard you're really good at this. Can you help me? Oh, this
Right.
is how you do it. Well, I have to go to the bathroom. Can you finish it for me?" And that bathroom turned into like a 3-day bathroom. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
Today bathroom break.
yeah.
No, I definitely get that. Before I bring you on, Mark, I want to bring in from the comments. Key says one of the things that he had to figure out, or deficiencies he had to figure out, was how to lead others, how to lead yourself, how to build discipline, how to keep your word, how to be a father, how to be a brother, how to be a protector, and how to be diligent. Ooh, how to be a provider. Absolutely. Oh, he still had some more. How to resolve conflict without fighting, and how to be a husband. Boy, look, I ain't gonna talk about the how to be a husband part. I struggle with that today because there was the separation of my parents. They separated or got divorced when I was 16 years old. But for the 16 years that they were together, they might as well have been separated. Like they were never really around each other. And it's interesting because now in my marriage, I struggle with that because the example I was given was like, yeah, husbands and wives don't really hang out. The wives hang out with their girlfriends, the guys hang out with their guy friends, and that's kind of they get together at nighttime. Like that was my perspective of what marriage was. And I have a wife whose love language is quality time. That perspective is not going to work for my marriage. And so I have to constantly remind myself that though that may have worked for my parents for 16 years, that is not going to be the solution for the marriage that I want to sustain. And so that was one of the deficiencies I had to figure out. Mark, for you, what deficiencies did you have to figure out?
One thing that stuck out to me was probably growing up would be like dating, like because my dad's from the Philippines, so back in the day, like 60s, 70s in the Philippines, like dating there, like I can't relate to his dating experience growing up in 2000s, 2010s in America. It's completely different. So like I'm in America, I'm Asian American, and talking to different women of different races and all that. So that whole dynamic, I had to figure that out on my own through a lot of trial and error. So that was a big struggle for me. As a teenager going into my 20s was the whole dating scene. Figuring out what I want from a relationship, what I want in a future spouse, and what I want from a woman that's eventually going to be like the mother of my children and all that. So it was very confusing for me, but I eventually you figured it out. I'm married now. I'm married almost 6 years, but yeah, that was one big deficiency, or just one big one big gap that I had to really figure out on my own. It was really tough too, but I just found a way, I guess. I don't know. It's a long story. That's like I can talk about that whole journey on another show, but that was a big thing for me.
No, I could understand that because even here in America, the 70s, the dating world was way different than it was in the 80s and the 90s and 2000. I mean, if you talk to somebody in the 70s and the 60s about, hey, you're going to talk to these people on the internet, you're never going to meet them face to face, and you're going to then go out on a date with them, a complete stranger you're going to go on a date with, they'd be like, there ain't no way. And so even as that has evolved for us in here in America, I can only imagine the dynamic from coming from overseas where things were one way, coming here and seeing number one the multitude of cultures that are here in America, right? And then to being like, okay, now how do I shoot my shot? And everybody is different. So I could 100% get behind that. I do want to ask, because you bring up something that's important, and you brought up this trial and error, and I want to bring this in as the next question, because what Art, to me, what you were alluding to, Art, was about kind of like our ego as men, right? Like we have this ego, we want people to think that everything we touch is gold, turns to gold, right? Like, man, you give him $1, he's gonna flip it into $1,000. Like we just want to be that guy. But the thing is that there's a lot of trial and error. And I've seen this picture. I wish I had it to present it right now, but I've seen this picture and it was like what people think success is. They think it's like a person walking from point A to point B, a straight line. They're like, but what success really is, it was like this squirrely, squiggly, went back sometimes, started back at the start line, went back over to the right, wrong way, left way, right way, and then arrived at success. So as men, as we are trying to be mentors and role models for other men to mirror and match behaviors off of us, how can we be more transparent about those outcomes of our trials and errors, specifically in the spaces where we fail? I'm gonna let anybody take that question.
Well, I think on that one, I would have to say it goes back to, again, our ego and our pride to say, hey, man, I cried. Hey, man, that divorce I had did affect me. Oh, man, because of this, I lost this awesome, amazing job. Like Mark has said, the trial and error, like, yeah, I like that girl. She, head over heels for her, and I tried, but it was a no-go. And by the way, Mark, don't worry about it. I try every day to get a girlfriend and stuff like that, but it's hard because my wife shoots them down, and it's like it ain't going. You know what I mean? So, but it's cool, man. We still trying. Play on. But it's just the overall, like, you yourself, me myself, I have to be the one to say, hey, a perfect example with my stepson and my nephew. I was talking to them. They're 14 years old. They're getting into learning about girls and learning about sports and stuff like that. And I tell them, hey, man, at the end of the day, you're the man, and what you provide is what's going to be your worth in that family, in that marriage, in that relationship, whatever it is you call it. Unfortunately, women and children, like Chris Rock said, women, children, and animals are worth something. They have a value. But us as men, we only have a value because we provide. And once you find that other person to say, nah, man, like that's not how it is, then things start to change. But that's also another trial and error to understand and accept that someone does see your value. You know what I mean? But again, we've had this conversation too before on the men's circle, and it's a constant rechecking, reevaluation. That at the end of the day, you are you, and you should be happy with who you are and who you, like me, who I've become, and I am. It's gone to the point where my daughter, when she looks at me, she gives me these googly eyes, like if I'm the most amazing thing in the world, and that's what I look for every day. And it's the smallest, littlest thing that no one other than you is gonna understand.
Absolutely. Really quick, before we get too far from the last question, Brian says patience, how to be understanding, how to effectively communicate, how to navigate relationships, what it takes to support a family. That goes back to not just child support, but like you didn't leave and you're still there and being that provider. How to manage anger and understand its consequences. Fear of being judged if I'm reading to the wrong direction. Sorry. Fear of being judged if transparent about outcomes, mistakes, and errors. Uh, yeah. Look,
Right there, that one's
so
it.
in my previous marriage, when my ex and I first got together, I was unemployed, on welfare, single parent, didn't really not the makings of like somebody you would want your daughter to be with at that time. And I remember my ex said something to her father because I overheard the conversation of like, "Yo, is this the truck you want to attach your trailer to? You sure?" Like, but I remember her telling him like, he has a lot of potential, and not just like potential in the sense of like he could really be somebody and his rap career could take off. No, it was like he really has actionable potential. And he is the type of person who's going to try to tap into that actionable potential. And here we are, I don't even know, 14, 15, 16 years later. And actually more than 16 years later. Wow. More than 16 years later. And the person that I am today, if I was the person who was showing up and saying, "Hey, I want to marry your daughter," he'd be like, "Yeah, absolutely." But there's that fear that comes, going back to what Brian says. Good to see you, cousin. There's that fear that comes in when it's like, well, I don't want to be, what group was it? Was it Destiny's Child? No, TLC, Scrubs. I don't want to be the scrub, right? I don't want to be the scrub. And I mean, there was times where I was literally in my best friend's ride, hanging out the passenger side, right? There were times of that, but the fear of being perceived as that makes it to where it's like, no, I just want to tell people all of my successes. Here's all the great things I've done. Don't worry about that stuff that I messed up on. And so I actually remember having a conversation with some younger men. They had reached out to me and they wanted to get together, like, "Hey, we just want to pick your brain about manhood." And I was like, "All right, let's talk." And so they were like, "If you were to give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?" And I said, for me, it would be, don't lie to yourself. You always are very in tune with what the truth is of every situation you're involved with. Now, if your girl's cheating on you and you don't know she's cheating on you, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the situations that you are directly involved in. You know the truth. And when you lie to yourself, you typically will make decisions that you'll later regret, and then you'll work harder to cover those decisions up because you knew better, and everybody knew that you knew better, but you most definitely knew that you knew better. And so for me, it was like I had to make the decision to stop lying to myself, because what was happening is I would tell a lie and then I would do everything to reinforce the lie, which was inevitably somebody that I didn't even want to be. And so then you go back to our fathers being in the household, frustrated, upset, distraught, disturbing the peace all the dang time. You go back to that, and it's like, well, that's the pressure that you have on you from your life situations. But some of that pressure could be avoided if you weren't lying to yourself. And so for me, it was learning about being transparent, not only with others about my outcomes, but being transparent about myself. Hey, yo, you didn't get that job because when you had the opportunity to study for the technology that you knew they were using, you didn't. And you went in there and said, "I'm going to wing it and I got it and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that." And now you're second place in that interview instead of first place. You could have been first place because you know that you're a studious, but because you didn't study and you didn't take it seriously because your ego said you got it, now you and your ego get to sit there and look for another job. So that's what I got. Anybody else want to jump in?
I could go. The thing that when you say how can we be more transparent from the outcomes of our trials and errors, I think it's as simple as this. If you're mentoring somebody or you're trying to aid somebody um, in their path, especially from if it's something you've experienced or you had recent experience with, you got to be honest with yourself. You said don't lie to yourself, but you also got to be honest with yourself, and you have to be willing to expose the emotion to whoever you're mentoring. A lot of times, what happens is you don't want to say how you got humiliated. Nobody likes to share that. Nobody likes to share about how they got did wrong and how it's you never really want to expose that, but you have to kind of go through that because I think about it like one of the things that helped me when I was in my worst of times. It wasn't necessarily always like the kind word. It was when somebody could relate to me, like, man, hey, let me tell you what happened to me. Da, 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 da. I walked in, you know, you know, she had five guys, but not the burger, that's all at one time. And I walked in on that and they made eye contact with me and really humiliated me. That's like a funny extreme version of it, but I'm sure that's happened to somebody out there. And being willing to expose that nerve to somebody that you're mentoring and then say, here's what I went through from there. I felt really down. It shows the person that they're not alone. I think where we are, when we don't show people that they're not alone, it doesn't necessarily help. It comes off as disingenuous because it's vague. It's like, oh, I've been there. I know how that is. You'll get through it. Keep your chin up or whatever it is. But when you're able to be willing to be raw, I think that's a little bit more above transparency. And that's, if you want to have an impactful relationship, you really want to help somebody, sometimes it's therapeutic to expose yourself because that helps you heal too. Because knowing that hurt helps somebody kind of helps repair that a little bit, at least in my experience.
Nice.
It goes to show that you're human. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you're human. You got feelings, you got worries, you got stressors, and you got you. You know what I mean?
Right. It's almost like a person who's a billionaire, and you're like, man, I'm struggling with these bills month to month, and da 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 da. Like, man, I really know what that feels like. And you're like, you're a billionaire. I'm pretty sure you don't know what that feels like because you could just file bankruptcy and then keep the whatever money that you have or sell assets. I don't have any assets to sell. So you're right. It brings out a human element. And in most of my impactful inspirational speaking, like face-to-face inspirational speaking, those have been the most impactful ones have been the ones where I've shared very deep and vulnerable stories about my life and who I am and things that I've experienced that are relatable to everybody else's experience. If you're not relatable when you're speaking to people, they're going to be like, yeah, well, that's you. You got to live a perfect life. I didn't get that privilege of a perfect life. It's like, no, I definitely didn't get that. And people, I didn't get lucky. If people, oh, you're lucky. I didn't get lucky. I'm fortunate, but I didn't get lucky. I've had to work. Mark and John, what do you guys got?
Can I just say one other thing? And I'll try to be succinct. Like my first marriage didn't work out, and thankfully it didn't because I'm with the person that I should be. But there's two ways you go from that. You can do what a lot of people do, which is, she's crazy, she's this, the problem's that person, not me. You gotta be able to take accountability for you, and you gotta start looking deep inside. Okay, what? Not saying it would have saved everything, but what could I have done differently? And I was in a really bad place. I did the suffer in silence thing, and I isolated myself. Now, when you're in a partnership with somebody, when you isolate yourself, you alienate them. And that's not necessarily the recipe for a good partnership. And you got to learn those lessons so you recognize it when you do move on. Like, I'm very cognizant of it. I know sometimes my wife probably gets annoyed that, you know, I do check-ins like, hey, what's going on? How you been? How you feeling? You know, how's this going? So it's learning those lessons from the past would not make me what I am today. So I just thought I'd add that in.
Cool.
All right. Excuse me. I'll go. I would say to be more transparent. I mean, a lot of you guys, made a lot of great points. I'd say, like, don't be afraid to go back in time to the person you were like years ago, because a lot of people tend to, after they made it to a certain place in life with relationships, career, whatever it is, they tend to try to completely forget, where they came from, because like who they were back then, it could be associated with a lot of, pain, insecurities, and all that. So they'd rather just completely block it out and just focus, on the future, which is fine that you want to move on with life. But when it comes to, mentoring someone, you need to, like you said, you need to be relatable. I'll just say, like, do your best to, like, really, go back, deep into the vault of your mind of, like, not only where you were at that time, but, like what were your feelings at the time as well? Like, what were you, what were you really feeling, and try to relate those feelings back then to, the person you're mentoring now. So that's what I would say.
Cool. No, I like the fact that you say not just back to them, but back to the feelings that you felt then. If you've ever been depressed and you go back to that point, it's easy to go back to that point, like, oh yeah, I was depressed, and not really think about the feelings. But when you think about, like, yo, I was on the verge of taking my own life, and because I didn't, here's all the wonderful things in life that I got to experience. That's different than, like, oh, you're depressed. Yeah, I've been depressed before too. Like, no, I've been depressed before and wanted to end my life. And this is what that looked like for me. And here's what I've experienced by being here. I had a contractor once tell me, he said, Billy, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I was just like, damn. When you think about all the problems that you'll experience in life, I'm sure all of us have more problems to experience in life. But when you think about all the problems that you've experienced in life and how you've somehow made it through them, if you pull the trigger or you end your life right there, that problem stops and it stays there, and you stop and you stay there. So I like the fact that you say attach yourself to the feelings that were back there as well, because especially I'm going to say, especially for men, because we have been conditioned and trained to not interact with feelings. We almost walk around where it's like, we know you felt something, but because we're men, it's the bro code. I'm not going to call you on your feelings, and you ain't going to call me on my feelings, and we don't have feelings. But to be able to say, like, yeah, no, that really impacted me. The day my son was born, my first son was born, the day he was born, I cried like a baby, just overwhelmed with emotion from his birth and seeing a life that I was responsible for. And it was something so profound that it, like, changed me as a person, as a man, and turned me into a father. That's how profound that moment was. So to just be like, oh, I'm gonna go back. Yeah, my son was born. Oh, congratulations, you're a father. And yeah, I'm a father too. I remember when my first son was born. No, there's emotions that are attached to that for me, because being a father was not something I wanted to be when I was younger. It was like, no, I don't want kids. I was a kid and I didn't like kids when I was a kid. So it was like, I don't want kids because I don't want to have more of these kids around me. So I like that you bring that in. John, what do you got to add?
I don't think I have much to add. I definitely like everyone's point here, especially the keeping it human, relatable. You really just got to build that safe space where everyone can be themselves, share their real experience, real emotions, and that's so hard to find. Like even like I definitely appreciate it here because Billy, I again you know how to select the participants, the panelists, the folks that comes on the chat. Because even after this, like I share with my little group, I don't believe they feel that it's a safe space. I mean, I could do my one-on-one, but when I get into like a group, like even a really small group, it's not there. It's kind of like, oh, like how you just say like, hey, John, you stay your distance from me. I'll keep my distance from you. So I'm like, okay. So what am I doing? So it's but yeah, it's that safe space. It's like, how do you build on trust? How do you build that trust?
I gotta say something here, John. What are you talking about? Select. I'm sending Billy a monthly of $100 to be on here, man. What you talking about, bro?
Hey, that's discounted. I think the last session, I think Bruce was paying you 150.
What? Oh, snap.
Yeah. No, really quick, I want to bring in what Key says. Key says, Tim, you're spot on. I think it also allows the individual to know that they're not alone in their experiences. We tend to zoom in on our problems and feel like we're the only one going through it. And that goes back to what you just said, John, where we just have this space where it's like, yeah, I don't really want to talk about this because it's really only me who goes through this. Like, I'm sure that every single one of us on here has had both a positive and a negative experience with our father. But when you're looking at your own experience with your father, you're like, this is my experience and it's unique to me. Yeah, it's unique to you because it's you and your father. But the overall overarching themes that take place in a father-son relationship, that's universal. And that's universal whether your dad is there or not. Like your dad not being there for a single day of your life, that overarching negativity is sometimes the negativity that people whose fathers are there. Like I said, my dad was very isolated from the household. So your father not being there, and my father being in the house but being extremely isolated, they're overarching themes that, it's almost like when they say, if the parent who leaves, the kid thinks that that's the parent who would have been the best parent had they have been there, right? But the reality is like, well, you don't know what they would have been because they weren't there. Meanwhile, I got somebody here who is giving me an experience that I am not interested in having. So if he would have been gone, I probably would have been like, that would have been my superhero whenever he shows up. What you got, Tim?
I was gonna say one thing that used to really get in my way is we're very logic-based human. I still deal with this to this day. My wife has to check me on this from time to time. We're so logic-based as men. Something as simple as expressing that, well, at least for me, I used to not see the value in it. Like, what is me opening up and talking about this problem? How that's going to get this fixed? Like, what's that going to do to solve it? And it takes, like, you have like that epiphany when you get that, vent that negative energy out. And maybe you do get that, you say something, that person says, oh, you know what? I actually have something, I could plug you in with somebody. I know somebody that went through that same thing and I could help you out with that. That opportunity wasn't there if you didn't say nothing, but just getting the energy out helps. But as a logic-based feelings I used to have, is like, why am I going to tell this person this ain't going to solve anything? I still got to go out there and solve it. So what's the point? But there is a point to it. As much as we want to act like we're not women, We aren't, but there is overlap to an extent. We're probably more on the logic side and they're more on the emotion side in general, of course. But that doesn't mean we're absent of emotion. And to not use that at all is not good.
It's reckless. Well, we're almost 30 minutes out from the time we end. So I have two more things I want to kind of roll through really fast. First thing is have you ever mirrored negative attributes that have impacted some of the men you have raised? Because it's easy to point the finger at our dads, right? Oh, dad did this or dad did that or uncle or it's easy to point the finger outward. But if we are really going to talk about about accountability and integrity, right? Going all the way back to the beginning, accountability and integrity, have we mirrored negative attributes that have impacted some of the men that we are currently raising or have raised? That is an accountability question. So I'm gonna let you guys go first. I'll go last because I already know my answer.
Well, would you look at that? It's past my bedtime, fellas. It's nice chatting with y'all. But I do gotta say, yes, I've as much as I've disliked the way my dad's attitude and authoritative reasoning was, or I've mirrored that, right? I've thrown that out on my son. I've thrown that out on my stepkids, and it's like, you do what I'm telling you. This is my house. If you don't like it, get out of here. I've done the I don't need to listen to you. Like, what have you done for me to listen, right? Like, all you do is cause trouble, but I've never taken the time to understand why that trouble was being caused. And at the end of the day, it's an attention. As much as I disliked my dad that he didn't pay a lot of attention to us as growing up, because his mentality was work, 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 work. That's how I provide for my family. Um, as much as I dislike that about him, I do that today. You know what I mean? My thing is, oh, well, we need to make rent. We need to buy this. Or we want to go on that vacation. All right, I'm going to go work. Thinking it's a good thing. Thinking that by me putting in those extra hours for all that cash, it's going to make up in the later day when we're on that vacation. But what happens on vacation? I'm tired. Give me that extra time to sleep. I need to make up some sleep. And no, I'm not really in the mood. Why don't you guys go out? I'll catch up. I think to me, those are some of the negative stuff that I've attributed or displayed to my, Padawans.
I trust me, I understand everything you just said. There was a time where I was working 3 jobs because I was trying to provide a house, right? We've got to buy a house. And so I got to make this extra money because the money I make is not enough to save and buy a house. So got to make more. And it was during that time of my life, it was like I'd go to birthday parties because I wasn't like, I'll catch up. I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to this birthday party. And I'm sitting on a chair asleep. I just wasn't present. And it's like, we think as men, our role as providers is that we got to provide at all costs. But our family doesn't want the cost to be at the cost of their interaction and time with us. And that's the hardest thing to let go when you're in provide mode is, yeah, I got to make these provisions, but sometimes it's not make the provisions. Sometimes I need to make these cuts. Maybe we don't go on a family trip or a vacation every other year to make that cut, to be intentional about the time that you have with your family, because providing that example of you being present in the house is equally as important as providing revenue and income to make sure the house continues to exist in and of itself. Who else has something?
I'll go ahead. Negative negative attribute I'd say is kind of happened recently, over the past couple months. We've been in the whole house search process. So as I don't know if all of you own a home, but there's like this back and forth between our real estate agent, seller's agent, and then all the negotiations back and forth and signing documents. There's a lot of moving parts going on. So there'd be certain times during the process where I get frustrated or impatient, and then I'd lash out and be like, raise my voice, be angry. I'd have a very hostile demeanor about myself, and most of the time it wasn't really warranted. I just had to learn to let go and trust the process. But as a man, I wanna be in control. Like, I want to have my hands on it. I want to be able to steer the ship. I don't want to be passive. I don't want to sit back and let other people, control the process, even though, it's not my place sometimes to be in control, but I have to be willing to let it go and let someone else and trust someone else to handle it for me. So I get frustrated, and then my son, he's real young, but he can still pick up on my energy. He can pick up on my body language. He can pick up on my tone of voice, the way I'm speaking. And then, my wife kind of called me out on it. She was like, the way you're presenting yourself in the situation, our son, he's watching you, like, and when you're raising your voice, when you're just having a very uptight or hostile type of demeanor, like he's copying you. And I can see it for myself too. Like, if I'm hyped up, or if I'm just in a mode of like I don't want to talk to anyone, or I'm just very to myself, I'm very cold and very distant, he'll copy that because he's in this copycat phase of life right now. So I would say, I have to be more cognizant of not just the words I say, but my body language and my tone of voice. So, because I don't like the way, because I know, like, when I'm in that moment of when I'm overreacting, or if I'm being irrational, like, I know I'm in that moment, and sometimes I don't care, and I just wanna vent. I just wanna let it out. But I need to realize that, even if I'm in that moment, like, and I have a kid now that's watching me, so it motivates me to do better and to have more emotional intelligence and to be more in control of my emotions, and realize, it's not just about me anymore. That, I need to be that example. Like, like, if I want to teach my son, like, oh, in hard times you need to be in control of your emotions, and you can't let your emotions be your guide. Like, you need to be logical and rational. And I can tell him that all day long, but if he's not seeing me exemplify that, if he's not seeing me practicing that in my own life, like, why would he listen to me? You know what I mean? So that's my piece.
Gotcha. No, definitely the example. I think babies teach that lesson the best, because before they can talk, they pick up your mannerisms. Like, if you're they'll like, they'll do what they see, because they don't. That's all they see. That's all they've ever seen is what they are exposed to. So, I think babies give us that, probably that
Reality check.
very deep reality check on what the overall world sees when they interact with us. It's almost like, when I'm dealing with business, right? I'm in a professional field. I'm dealing with business. And at one point, I was presenting to like a higher up, an exec, and the exec at the end of my presentation, the exec says, "You speak really well." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks." Right? I'm not up there presenting to speak well. That's not what my presentation wasn't on how to speak well, right? But I'm speaking and I'm presenting and I'm in a business environment, so my enunciation, my articulation is very concise on getting my points across for my presentation. I would have never thought in a million years that while I'm giving this presentation, this person is assessing how well I speak. But the world does that. You would never think while you're saving $100 a month that somebody's watching you save $100 a month and saying, "Man, I can't wait to get to that point in my life where I can save $100 a month." For you, you're just like, "Man, I wish I could save $1,000 a month." But they're looking at the 100 that you're saving, and they are making judgments and assessing your presence as a man in the world. So I love the fact that you bring that example as your son looking to you for that guidance, but the world does it in many different ways when it comes to men. John or Tim?
Yeah, I really like what Mark said in terms of like that negative attribute, or can be negative attribute, in terms of being in control. It's that need to be in control. So you're trying to control, like, any of your, all of your kids, because thing is, it creates a lot of negativity. It for me, it creates that on that emotion, but then it's like the negative emotion. So it leads to psychological trauma. So, and that's something that I have realized that I have done, that it was done to me, and then like I'm doing it to my kids, and I'm trying to heal from that process, heal from the damage that I help heal from the damage that I created. So that's something that I've recognized.
Before I go, I gotta acknowledge something Mark said, because Mark, you just said something that made me think of something I've seen recently in a totally different light. So I was watching these, you go down the rabbit hole of watching reels or TikToks, right? And I seen this reel, and it's a little boy. He's probably like a year old, and he picked up somebody's cell phone. He's playing on the cell phone. He's mimicking. He's like, yeah, and then he hangs up forcefully, sets the phone down, then he goes like that. And everybody's dying laughing off this little kid. Now I look at that little kid, I'm wondering, what the hell is this kid seeing where he's reliving that? Ain't so
Right.
funny no more. And that's, I think you said it right on the money, bro. Sometimes little babies like that, they give you a window into a world that you don't have privy to see. You see something, they show you something of how they're at, like they mimic a behavior, like, wait a minute, hold on, what's going on here? But to get to the question, please let me meet anybody that answers no to this. That is a very blessed soul. They are wiser than I have ever been. Yes, the answer to this question is yes. My dad used to be very snappy at me, and I always said I wouldn't be that way. And there's been times where I've been that way, where you snap and you like, and then I feel the emotion that he must have felt. Like, just do what the hell I'm telling you. I don't need to explain myself. I feel it. It's almost like you said Padawan earlier, Art. It's almost like the Sith. Let it flow through you. Let the hate flow through you. You know what I mean? And you catch yourself. So one of my catches to that is, for one, let me make it right. If I ever come out of the way, express boil over frustration, let me show my kids what making amends looks like. Let me apologize for my actions. Let me say, hey, look, I didn't mean to take that on you. I was wrong. And then I shall try to teach them to help them understand. Let me explain to you why I was so frustrated. Not saying that it was right, but let me walk you through what was going through my mind, which led to that. And that has worked out pretty well. I feel like my kids have a pretty good understanding of me, and I feel like I've nurtured some good relationships with my kids. Um, but that's kind of the way, like the way I parent, the way I do parenting is I don't take like, let me do what my dad did, but not let me do the opposite. It's not necessarily that. It's like, what did my dad do, and how would I do it better or differently? Like, I used to get punished, and everybody could relate to this. I'm guessing, maybe you can't, but I'm guessing at least Ro could relate to this, where you do something, get your ass whooped by your parents, and you in the room throwing your fists like Trey from and Boys in the Hood, mad at the world because you got your ass whooped, but you got to be quiet because you don't want them to say like, "Oh, you still talking in there?" or whatever, because you don't want it round two. You just kind of dealing with it, and then about an hour goes by, and your mom comes in, "Hey, you gonna eat? You ready to eat? You hungry?" And it's like we just blow right past the fact that I just got beat the hell. I just got the pinata treatment in front of everybody, and now I got to go eat dinner in front of my sisters, and they're looking at me trying not to laugh in my face, like, yeah, you got to refuel after that ass kicking you got, you know, and I look at that, I'm like, okay, I hated that feeling. I hated getting whooped sometimes and not really understanding why I got whooped. So in the rare times I do got to enforce that level of discipline, they always know. They always know why. And I usually warn them ahead of time because I never got a warning. It was just
Right.
0 to 100 real quick. It was, you say a comment, you didn't even think it was that bad. Yak 'em. Next thing you know,
Right.
whoa, that escalated quickly. But I always tell my kids, all right, you keep playing with me. You're escalating this real quick. You're getting calm, Dad. You don't get up, a little bit charged, emotionally charged, Dad, and then you don't get the set it off, Dad. And once set it off, Dad comes in, he ain't listening to reason. That'll be post trauma, Dad. After the ass whooping, I'll listen to reason, then I'll be sorry for what I did. But you ain't gonna reason with ready to take it to the max, Dad. That all reason is gone.
Right.
So the negative attributes, yeah, I think there's always going to be that there because we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. The goal is at the end of the day, I feel is to push it forward. You're never going to take it to where you begin and then get it to the finish line, but just push the ball forward a little bit, and then hopefully your grandkids get a little bit better, and then hopefully your great grandkids have it a lot better, and just know where you're at in the chain of events. You're not going to see chances are you're not going to see the overwhelming transformation in your time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Same thing with like wealth. You go from like my parents didn't graduate high school. All their kids graduated high school. All their kids went to some college. You know what I mean? Now we got college graduates in our family. And then down the line, we'll start having doctors and stuff like that. It's just not everybody's starting places in the same spot. And there's really no such thing as fair. You just play with the hand that you dealt.
Absolutely. Really quick, because we got about 15 minutes left. I got Key says yelling after not being listened to repeatedly. Absolutely. Look, I'm yelling sometimes after not being listened to the first time, not even repeatedly. Now he does it to his sister. So your son's watching and doing it to his sister, not responding or acknowledging when spoken to or asked a question. He said, what should be done as his father is to show him how to get his point across without raising his voice and to be more persuasive and patient. Ooh, I like that word, persuasive. Oh, and patient with his sister. As a father, I should also be an example to show him that when spoken to, it's important to acknowledge the person who's speaking to you, even if you're busy at the time. Yes, these are all great things, but I love that persuasiveness because I am learning that with my wife. Tim will tell you, because Tim and I, when my wife and I first moved in together, when we were dating still, I was playing video games all the time, and she just didn't understand that I was actually a video game player, because when we were dating, there was no game out that I was playing. So it seemed like, oh, if this is what a gamer is, then that's fine. You don't play video games once every month. Well, then a game that I play actually comes out, and it's like she would be coming down and being like, "Are you going to come up to the bed tonight, or what's the story here? Like, is this game that important?" And I was kind of like, "Well, I'm not tired, so why would I come up to the bed if I'm not tired?" And it caused a lot of friction and it caused a lot of arguments. And my wife and I were actually having a conversation, I think last week, where I asked her, I said, "Hey, babe, I want to know if what I'm doing is working well for you in regards to, playing video games some days and then other days just kind of spending time with you on the couch, watching a show that we can both enjoy or whatever it may be." And she was like, "No, I really appreciate you doing that. And because of that, I'm noticing," she's not like, "And now I'm not nagging you about playing video games," but I'm able to see it's like, on this past Friday, I was like, "Hey, babe, I want to play video games with the squad. Are you okay with that?" She says, "Yeah, if you don't mind, can we have dinner together first, and then you can play the game?" Sure, no problem. So we go and we eat dinner. I come back, we get on the game. I don't even know what time I played the game until. But when we were done playing the game, we were done playing the game, and my wife wasn't like, "Oh, he's in there playing the game again." So learning how to be persuasive, man, if it there's a difference between being persuasive and manipulative. I'm not spending time with my wife to manipulate her into leaving me alone so I can play video games. I'm trying to meet the need that she has on her side of the negotiation and give her what she needs so that I can also get what I want on my side of the negotiation. And that is the persuasiveness of it. It's not manipulating her. So, "Oh, well, I'm just going to manipulate you and I really don't want to spend time with you." No, I actually do want to spend time with my wife. And she said, she's probably going to be mad, whatever. She says to me, "So, babe, what's kind of changed to make you want to spend more time like together?" And I said, "Well, you haven't been nagging me. And so when you don't nag me, I actually want to spend time with you." But the caveat to that is sometimes what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? Uh, is it because I'm not spending time with you that you're nagging me to spend time with you? Or is it because you're nagging me to spend time with you, I'm not spending time with you? And the simple thing is whether the chicken or the egg comes first, doesn't matter. Who's going to break the cycle? Who's going to break the cycle and say, "Okay, I'm going to spend time with you in much more abundance to alleviate the need for you to nag me, which is going to make me want to spend more time with you." And so that persuasiveness is really, man, you got a whole men's circle on that joint right there. But I have absolutely mirrored negative attributes. And the one that stands out, I'll be very brief about, is I have a cousin who's, I think, 3 or 4 years younger than me. And I remember when we were kids, I would always tell him, "Never write down anything that you don't want somebody to know. They can't know it if you don't write it down." And this cat is a grown man. And I remember I went to go and visit him, and he was just like, "Yeah, cousin, I still remember what you taught me. Never write anything down if you don't want them to know." And when I think about that, it's like, how many things did you just hold inside and never got out because you didn't want anybody to know them? Meanwhile, I'm an emotional wreck, temper tantrums, suicidal, depressed, emotionally engaged with women who are not emotionally engaged with me, like all kinds of things. But you're taking that advice from me because I'm your big cousin, and you see that when it comes to the opposite sex, I don't really have struggles with getting what I want from the opposite sex. But the problem is that I have all these other struggles that have nothing to do with the opposite sex. So I've mirrored negative attributes in that regard as well. And part of undoing that, going back to your point, Tim, is being accountable to that and saying, "Hey, yo, I kind of got that wrong. Maybe you should write some things down and really take some time to think about them and get them out there, air those bad boys out, so you're not rolling around here smelling like BO all the time."
Yeah, he took that elevated from "don't write it down, they don't know" to deny, no face, no case. He probably took that like 10 levels.
Yeah. Really quick, I want to get your guys' final thoughts before we wrap and I do the takeaways for this evening. But really quick, in your final thought, if you could think of the most powerful message that you can provide to both established and upcoming men. But we'll start with you, Mark. Since we started with you, we're gonna end with you. Mark, for you, what are your final thoughts from this conversation on the men's circle tonight, and what would be your most powerful message that you would provide to established or upcoming men?
Main thing I would want to tell everyone is, when it comes to, figuring out, your life mission, like for yourself and, for your family, is to get alone with yourself, just be alone with your own thoughts, and, really just block out, all the noise, distractions, just really have a really great idea of, what do you really want as a man out of life for yourself, and what legacy do you want to leave, for your children and your grandchildren. Because, when we go through life, everything we do in life, it's tied to a purpose. So, so what do you want? Like, what do you really want? Not what online influencers say you should strive for. Not what your friends, your siblings, family, friends, whoever, really have a deep understanding of your mission and what you want for your family. And once you finally figure that out, really stand on it. Don't apologize for it. Don't try to water it down. Once you figure out what you really want and what your legacy is, just roll with it, go all in on it. So that's what I would say to young men out there.
Gotcha. Oh, we lost Art. John, what you got?
Yeah, I really like this conversation, Billy. I would say the message that I got is you can really learn from others. You go besides your own experience, you can learn from others, getting that mentor, and as well as leaning on your brothers too. Um, and you really just have to be. I believe Tim said it earlier. You really have to be transparent. Be transparent. Be honest with yourself. And I have said you really got to create that safe space to really have that real honest conversations. The guidance that you're looking to provide, or to receive that guidance. You got to be honest with yourself. If you're not, we're just wasting time.
I'll really quick. I like that, John. The transparency aspect is a two-way street. It is being transparent about your experiences with others. Like, hey, I've gone through this, whatever. But also it is being transparent about when you need help. Like, it's not just what I went through in the past. It's what I'm going through right now in the present. And I need help. If you're not transparent with that, it's easy to fall into that cycle of nobody cares about me. Nobody gives a shit about me. So what's the point, right? So that transparency is a two-way street, and I like that you bring that up. Art, final thoughts and your most powerful message.
Well, final thoughts on this is an amazing show. I enjoyed it. I liked a lot of everyone's examples, life experiences, and I thank you all for opening up. It's hard to open up and give that much of you, right? Especially when it's something that you consider an insecurity, because at the end of the day, your insecurities are mine. You know what I mean? We just have a different way to deal with them. But my message to everyone that's paying attention and actually here to evaluate and take a piece of what we have to say is be selfish to be generous, because at the end of the day, we are all family men, and in order for us to provide for our family, is we have to be selfish with our time from work to spend with our family, as we have to have time for ourselves to work so we can provide for our family. We're all human. Like you all said, we need that transparency to say, hey, I'm tired today and let's relax. I'm tired of being home. I need to go to work. I need to go to the park and relax. I need to go to the beach and get away from this child that's crying. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, again, we need to have that transparency and understanding that just as I want, my spouse wants to leave and not hear this child crying. You know what I mean? To understanding that I'm a man, but I can take a woman's role. That's my thing.
Gotcha. And Tim, what you got?
A couple things. One, you think about what prevents us from being more transparent and all that stuff. I thought about this, and it's like there's very few things that are as liberating as having a healthy gauge on your level of care what others think. Too often than not, we let the influence of others and what others might think of us influence the actions that we take, and we let that intrude our households. Once you get a healthy balance where, you know what, I care enough about what people think so I'm not a pariah and I don't blacklist myself from professional opportunities. But besides that, I don't really care what you think about really anything about me. That's you could if that's on your mind, I trust you. Trust me, it's not reciprocal. You're not on my mind like that. That's a very liberating thing. And once you find that measure and you find that acceptance, you start finding yourself a little bit better. And then it's humility, man. You got to understand you're never going to know anything or everything. You're only going to know. There's going to be times where you feel like you know more than what you did, but it's fleeting because you're going to find one thing leads to another thing you didn't know anything about. And it's like, it's almost like Inception. It's like another layer and another layer. Like, whoa, if I didn't know that, then I also don't know this and I don't know that. But it's nice when you can look at a little bit of a younger generation and see, well, that dude doesn't even know this. Let me help him with that. And to understand that it's selfless, man. You're not going to get any reward out of anything you do. It's just the knowledge and knowing you're helping somebody else. There's the government doesn't write you a check. You don't get royalties off the person's success. You know what I mean? Right. So if you're doing it in pure of heart and you're humble and you value the opinions of those that matter and not the ones of people that don't, that's pretty much the three things I'd give you. If you're doing those things, you're ahead of 99% of the world.
Right. And Instagram and social media.
Right. Like how many times you see that crap where, oh, look at this couple with their cute little YouTube channel. Oh, he killed her. Oh, wow. Or, right. Oh, they're not together no more. But they look so cool on their TikToks. Yeah. Once you understand that a lot of people care so much about what others think that they allow that they worry about the image of themselves, not the actual meaning of themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Final thought for me on this raising men. Really, there's a lot of things that we touched on. Transparency, integrity, accountability, and really, I think out of all the things, the biggest thing to me is the humanity of men and bringing that back from, I'm going to say, reeling that back a little bit from this stoic perspective that we've established, the machismo of I'm a man, I'm going to put it all on my back and I'm going to carry it, right? To like, yo, I'm a man and I'm willing to put it on my back to carry it, but I'm also willing to say, yo, I need some help. Like, I can't carry this alone, because as I'm carrying this burden, that burden, this burden, that burden, making sure bills are paid, making sure my mental health is straight, and all the other things, and that I'm not caught up in layoffs and all those things, at some point, I don't care how strong you are, at some point, your arm, if you're holding a 1 pound weight out to the side, is going to fail. And for me, my most probably powerful message to men, established or young upcoming men, would be that you're not in it alone. Your experience is unique to you because you are unique, but your experience itself is not unique because we all experience it as men. And I think many of us wish that the men that came before us would have at least said, heads up, it's a little bit, the road ahead is a little rough. And here's why. And maybe some of them they did in the way that they thought by quote unquote toughening us up, right? But some things in life don't require you to be tough in order to overcome them. And if everything, as I forget what movie it is, but if everything in your life you see as a nail, you're always going to use the hammer. Sometimes you might need a screwdriver. Sometimes you might need a rubber mallet so that you don't damage what you're nailing in. But if all you know how to be is a hammer, at the end of the day, you're going to cause more havoc when you're hammering in something that you were supposed to be screwing in. So that would be my most powerful message. Really quick, because we're at 2 hours. I want to give the quick takeaways from tonight's message or tonight's session. The very first one was accountability and integrity. As mentors and leaders of men, you got to be willing to be accountable and have integrity. And accountability is not just what you do in the face of others. It's what you do when nobody's there. That's what accountability and integrity are. It's when nobody's around, when you couldn't get caught, when nobody would ever know, right? What do you do in those moments? That's accountability and integrity. And if you truly want to be leaders of men and help the upcoming men or help even established men, you got to be ultra accountable to your actions. It doesn't mean you have to beat yourself up. And I think that's where we mess up sometimes as men. We go into self-sabotage, self-beat-up mode, and then we're black and blue, all beat up and can't help anybody, including ourselves. It doesn't have to be that, but just simply being accountable. I remember when my wife and I started dating, one of the things was, hey, I had to be accountable to making a decision to no longer be sexually involved with other women because I had made the commitment to her that I would tell her if I was involved sexually with other women. And at that point, it was like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I told her the one time that I was, and then after that, it was like, it's not worth having to tell her this. So why would I sleep with this person? It's not worth telling her this. So I'm not going to sleep with this person in order to not have to deal with sharing what I said I would share. So accountability and integrity are extremely important. Key takeaway number 2, it's important to be human. It's more important to be human than perfect. When people see you as perfect, when they think you've never made a mistake, it's really hard, again, to get to that, John, you said relatable. It's hard to get to that relatability with them because they're like, yeah, you've never experienced what I've experienced. You know, you've never had to make the choice on whether or not to use drugs. And I experience this a lot in corporate America because they see me and they're like, oh, super professional, all these wonderful things. And I'm like, dude, I grew up in the hood. Like, there's certain things that I have experienced that have skewed your suburban existence. I didn't grow up in the suburbs. I grew up in the hood. So it's like, it's important to be that human person. And then when you are human with people like that, what ends up happening is they say, oh, wow, you know, Billy's really a down-to-earth person. He's a real person that I can actually have a conversation with, and I don't have to worry about him blowing smoke up my ass 24/7. That's the importance when you want to be a mentor of men, is they got to know that you're not just going to blow roses and cologne at them every second you can get. You're going to give them the real. And when you give them the real, they know that it's coming from a place of not, oh, well, look I went through it and it was tough for me too. It's like, no, you're not the only one who's going through this. We can go through this together. That's the difference. Key takeaway number 3 is other men are watching you to duplicate your example. That goes back to what you were talking about, Mark, with your son, that it's not just our children who are watching us. The world is watching us. And the world, I believe, watches with a much more critical eye now because of social media. So it's almost like some people are waiting for you to mess up. Other people are just literally waiting to see what you would do or what you are going to do. I've been in some very challenging situations where it was like, yo, I don't want to even talk to anybody about this, but I'm going to talk to them about it. I mean, I've had to even tell my son some stories about things that I've done where it's like, I'm telling you this because I'm trying to keep you from duplicating these behaviors. And so far, so good. My son's 21. I don't have a grandson from him. So far, so good. He's about to outdo his old man and his grandfather on the time it has taken for him to have a child. Congratulations and kudos to him. But other men are watching you to duplicate your example. And not only are they watching to duplicate your example, they're also watching to sometimes enter that vulnerable space to be able to say, this is somebody I can trust. This is somebody I can go to, and I know they're not going to steer me wrong. So that's takeaway number 3. And then finally, key takeaway number 4 is we never arrive, and we must continue to evolve. I don't say a lot of things that we have to do or we must do, but if we are going to be leaders of men and mentors of men, the moment you think you arrived, it's time for you to get another mentor, because the journey of manhood, if you live a long enough life, right, is never designed to be where you reach complacency and you cease learning. As I said in the beginning, I learned from my father growing up as a child. I learned as a father raising my oldest son and my other sons, and now my stepdaughter. And I'm going to learn continually with my grandson. And if Lord willing, I'm here for a great grand, I'll continue to learn through that process as well. But I'm also learning it as there's different people around me and different lessons and different things to learn about myself, because the situations that I'm put in are not the same situations I was in when I was 9, 10, and 11. So realize and recognize that we never arrive. And it is of the utmost importance that we continue to evolve. Other than that, that's all I got, man. We are on the second session for January. So we'll be back in another 2 weeks. Don't ask me what that date is. I have no idea what it is, but we'll be back in 2 weeks, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I thank you guys for tuning in live. Thank you guys for joining us in the live chat. As always, if you like this video, share it. I'm telling you, share it with at least 2 to 3 men this week. If you share this video, like it. Always happy to engage with you in the chat, and we love engaging with you in the comments if you're going to message us after on the replay. So until the next time, thank you guys for tuning in. One love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.